This now comes into the next segment of the Targaryen Genealogy 101, as William will now learn of where the Targaryen dynasty comes to an end. The house, technically, in a symbolical way, has already fallen because there is no one there at Dragonstone. Yet, Stannis Baratheon doesn't know this yet. In any case, the end of the Targaryen dynasty ends with current King Aerys II Targaryen. As we will see, the last acts of Robert's Rebellion unfolds, and William will learn about how Jaime Lannister, who is the brother to Cersei Lannister and son to Tywin Lannister, becomes known as the Kingslayer. While this is going on, there's some other things that had been covered. The Faith of the Seven, who had been ignored at the time when Bloodraven was still serving King Aegon V way back when, decides not to be ignored anymore, and they make an excuse without approval from King Aerys II Targaryen, and not that they need one from soon-to-be King Robert I Baratheon, to do a first ever, and most likely only, type of religious crusade. The Faith of the Seven versus, or going against, the Valaryon and Targaryens faith of fire and ice gods, because they are considered to be heretics. And so while the crusade is going on, Uncle Aegon, who was once known as the Mystery Knight, is still making his way to an estate that he, his wife, Sashka Valaryon, and Princess Elsa Valaryon have purchased, thus saving the last two dragons. In any case, the Crusade takes place on or about the same time that King's Landing is sacked by House Lannister. So this is going to be quite the detailed ending for not only the religious movement for Velaryons and Targaryens of their gods of fire and ice, started long ago, where they have to go into hiding to practice their religious beliefs, but at the same time ends the Targaryen dynasty at the time that King's Landing is sacked by House Lannister, and with much the aid of Jaime Lannister, who betrays his sworn oath as Knight of the King's Guard by slaying Daenerys Stormborn of the House Targaryen's father, King Aerys II.
Was geht es laut sein Ehren, Herr und Landes Fett? Wir werden auch nicht zögern, ob ihr euch wirklich fühlen am polnischen Sitz. Fragt die Fürsten leise, bitte uns nicht fällen, auf Gottes Erde reich. Sein Lob ich immer weise, macht uns Leuten reich. Die einen anderen Weise, wird schlimm nicht auf die Weise, dann ist gar ungleich.
As an additional note, though it could be theory and conjecture and cannot be proven, the faith of the Seven remember long ago when one called Bloodraven was in attendance about who would be the next rightful king to the Iron Throne of Swords for the Royal Kingdom. And as everyone knows, it did come down to Aegon V at that time period. But nobody wanted to hear about the faith of the Seven wanting to pursue those they considered to be heretics for a new religious practice of Valyrian Targaryen tradition called the Gods of Fire Knights. So, the faith of the Seven, High Scepton, though his name is never known, who wears a crystal crown because again Tyrion had at one time considered this, and it would make him look fallen, decides to take advantage of the opportunity caused by Robert's rebellion and to go on what would be considered a form of religious crusade to rid the world of the seven known kingdoms of heretics because they will not convert or be converted to the faith of the Seven. Though some were not too eager for this, they didn't cross his path because this is one order that they decided they could do without the approval of Aerys II Targaryen. So like that of the green wildfire, they began their crusade, sweeping through all of Westeros. For those that were fortunate enough to get away, as they had the skills of Valyrian and Targaryen traditions, they could remain hiding and only be seen if they wanted to be seen. But sadly to say, for those that were lowborn, who didn't hold highborn class for having claim to the Iron Throne, basically like what William Bruce Targaryen, Daenerys Stormborn's human husband's understanding would be, that they would be somewhat like commoners. And most of them, if they weren't killed while running from the faith of the Seven militants, who once again picked up swords and any weapons they could get a hold of, though the ruling said they couldn't, would kill them as they were chased down or simply caught and declared that their gods, the faith of the Seven, informed them that they have a right to burn them at the stake. So the question then would be, who is the heretics? The faith of the Seven, or the Targaryen gods of Fire Knights? But again, Daenerys is only a little girl, and her strength of the Targaryen ways and traditions would not be enforced until such time as Daenerys would then pursue the rightful claim to the Iron Throne of Swords that is wrongfully taken from the House of Targaryen. So in which case then, the battle ensues, or in this case, the slaughtering of the innocents of lowborn Targaryens. And eventually, they try to make a go of it, going into Essos. And so thus is the scenes of the short, secret Faith of the Seven militant chase down and hunting like dogs of those who believe in the spirit world, and that there should be no shame of one walking around or being nude, not to be ashamed of their bodies, and that there is no shame in the world. And for their belief of the spirit world, should one live a long and prosperous life doing good, to worshiping the gods of Fire Knights, as started by a mysterious priestess long ago, Hera Targaryen, from way back to Aegon III's time. Now, while this Crusader event is taking place, Aegon, who is dubbed by Aerys II, known as the Uncle, has already sailed across the narrow sea and is making his way to this new estate that he had bought because he is fulfilling a prophecy that he had to save the last two dragons, Daenerys Stormborn of the House of Targaryen and her only surviving older brother, Viserys III Targaryen. While they are making their way there, as stated before, the High Scepton, riding into what he considers to be glory, goes to the temple, which is quite large, in Essos. Now, from a human understanding, because they had their mythological beliefs of one called Achilles, who could throw a spear quite well. Who's to say that in the Mary's world, a female couldn't do much like that of Achilles? A high priestess, who is now known as Jenny of Old Stones, because she had been taught the ways from the priestess before, is teaching one who will be the next priestess, but unfortunately she will not get this chance. Jenny of Stones is injured by an arrow to the chest, for which she is not certain whether she had died because of this, or what her outcome was, because it was never ever documented. In any case, though theory and conjecture, the one being trained by Jenny of Oldstone, who is the new Gods of Fire and Ice priestess, as they follow in their lineage, sees one that rides as if he's mightier than thou and holier than thou type attitude on the horse, and to much amazement to the lowborn Targaryens, who also go to this huge temple in Essos, are surprised when a spear misses her. She picks up the spear and with all her might thrusts it forward, and it runs right through the High Scepton wearing the crystal crown, knocking him completely mid-air off his horse, and his body slams to the ground, breaking the other end of the spear going through his back. His crown rolls away from him, and he is instantly killed. As the rest of the lowborn defend themselves, chopping off heads, arms, legs, blood, and guts flying all over the place, it is a complete annihilation of those that tried to invade Essos to persecute the Valaryon and Targaryens for their religious beliefs with the gods of fire and ice. Two survivors only of the faith of the 7 millions quickly swipe up the crown made of crystal and retreat in a fast-paced manner. It is then decided, as Jenny of Oldstones could be done, that they could return, that this may not be the end of it. Little did they know that this was only a one-time thing and there will not be any more coming after them. But for their own protection, they decide that, unfortunately and most sadly, they can never come back to this temple to do their Valyrian Targaryen traditions of worship for the gods of fire and ice. So they too decide to go into hiding, and only those who are faithful to their religious beliefs of the gods of fire and ice will meet at certain times to do their time of worship and meditation. And so thus the temple becomes locked up and empty for quite some time until the mysterious legend and myth, a real human, comes into Daenerys Stormborn of the House of Targaryen's world as per another prophecy. But that is a tale for another time. As we remember at an earlier point in time, AJ, or as Aerys II Targaryen had dubbed him, the mysterious knight as Uncle A.J, to make it simpler for Daenerys Stormborn and her older surviving brother Viserys III to understand, though he was a distant cousin in actuality, only being half Targaryen and half Baratheon. Was almost caught. Jaime listened intently, but didn't see nothing and continued on. And so, again, this all took place just as the Faith of the Seven were also making ready to do their crusade. They were fortunate enough to get to a certain point where he met a friend of his who had an extra horse. Daenerys and Viserys III shared a horse, while Aegon then paid his friend to take care of his mother, who he had just learned had passed away because being up there in age, Princess Rhaella, the aunt to Aerys II Targaryen, her flame finally went out, as in accordance with Targaryen tradition, and that he would risk his life to make sure she had a proper burial below the Red Keep in the catacombs. They finally meet up with Aegon's wife and his daughter, Sashka Valaryon, and Princess Elsa, and they continue on to his estate, while the lad with the hay wagon goes his separate way after being paid and promised to be unharmed by Aegon, not to ask questions, to meet up with his family, and they go their direction because they know that it's a matter of time before chaos will most likely lead to the sacking of King's Landing, but they're not there to confirm this. In any case, while they are off in their direction, and as much as the Faith of Seven Crusade comes up after them but never discovers them, go into the direction of this great temple in Essos, Jaime Lannister finally does as he had said. To do the unthinkable, one must have to go deep inside, far away. And he does just that. Kingslayer. While a rebel army, led by Eddard Stark, raced towards King's Landing after Rhaegar's death at the Trident, Lord Tywin Lannister appeared first at the gates of the capital with 12,000 men. His main concerns were that King Aerys II Targaryen would be capable of killing Jaime out of spite, as well as that Jaime himself could do something rash. Though Lord Varys, the Master of Whispers, counseled Aerys against opening the gates, the king listened to Grand Maester Pycelle, who told him that his old hand, Tywin, had come to his defense. As much the city gates were open to Tywin and his army, but once inside, Tywin betrayed Aerys and began the sack of King's Landing. As a sole King's Guard remaining in King's Landing, the defense of the Red Keep became Jaime's responsibility. Knowing that he did not stand a chance to defend the castle, he sent a messenger to the king, asking for leave to make terms with the attackers. The messenger came back with the Aerys order that Jaime should bring him Lord Tywin's head, to prove that he was no traitor. The messenger also informed him that Rosart was with the king, leading Jaime to believe that Aerys was about to command the destruction of the city. Jaime killed Rosart, who was dressed as a common soldier, and hurrying to a postern gate. When the king and the throne saw the blood on Jaime's sword, he demanded to know whether it was Tywin's, renewing his command that Jaime should bring him his father's head. Otherwise, Jaime would burn with all the other traitors. When Jaime answered that it was Rosart's blood, the frightened Aerys ran towards the Iron Throne. Jaime hauled him off the steps and killed his king with a single slash across the throat, thereby preventing him from giving the command to burn the city to some other pyromancer. As a side note, it wasn't just his throat that was cut, but Jaime, as a final act, stabbed his sword, running King Aerys II through from back to his front above the navel. Lord Tywin's men, led by Sir Ellis Westerling and Lord Roland Crackenhall, burst into the throne room in time to see that Jaime had killed the king, forestalling any chance for Jaime to steal away and let someone else claim responsibility. Jaime told them to advise all who were still fighting that the king was dead and to spare anyone who yielded. Lord Crackenhall then asked whether a new king should be proclaimed as well, indicating that it could be Lord Tywin or Robert Baratheon, or that even a new Targaryen king could be proclaimed. As a side note, Jaime, now sitting on the Iron Throne, with much pride for what he has done, not just saving his own family's lives, but ridding the world of the seven known kingdoms of a mad king. Jaime mused on the possibility of choosing Viserys, or Rhaegar's son, Aegon, as the new king with Tywin as his hand, but realizing that both boys shared the same blood as Aerys and thus the same propensity for madness, Jaime declared to Lord Crackenhall that it was all the same to him. He then seated himself on the Iron Throne, waiting to see who would come to claim it. He was found sitting there with his golden sword across his legs when Lord Stark rode into the hall with his men to claim the throne for Robert. Jaime gave up the throne to Eddard, proclaiming it to be an uncomfortable seat. In the following days, Jaime secretly hunted down and killed the two other pyromancers involved in Aerys' wildfire plot, Bellis and Garregas. Although Eddard urged Robert to strip Jaime of the white cloak, arguing that he should at least be made to join the Night's Watch, Robert listened to Jon Arryn instead. Jaime was pardoned by King Robert I, together with Varys and Pycelle, and continued to serve in the King's Guard along with Sir Barris himself. Jaime was present at Robert's coronation feast, where Robert joked about the fact that Jaime was already being called Kingslayer. He is known to himself, other King's Guard, and as far as Winterfell and Essos, by the nickname. Though rivaled by the realm for his betrayal, Jaime considers the slaying of Aerys to be his finest act. His true motivation for killing King Aerys remains unknown to the masses. Sack of King's Landing. Now, already prior to the Battle of the Trident, King Aerys had been preparing his wildfire plot. As everyone knows, now Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne of Swords for the realm of the kingdom, fell in battle at the Trident. Shortly thereafter, the Greyjoy's house got into the battle because they won spoils. They had one victory, but it was minimal at best. And was merely more like confrontation, which distracted Robert I Baratheon so that Prince Rhaegar Targaryen could get a proper burial ceremony below the Red Keeps and the catacombs and crypts. Well, in any case, upon the realization that all was lost, Aerys ordered Rosar to ignite the wildfire cliches throughout the city, wishing to leave Robert nothing but ashes and bones. He ordered Sir Jaime Lanister, Lord Tywin's oldest son, and the only knight of the King's Guard present in the city, to kill Tywin and bring his head to Aerys. Instead, Jaime killed Rosar, and upon the realization that Aerys would simply give the order to burn the city down to another pyromancer, returned to the Red Keep and murdered Aerys himself in the throne room, where mere seconds before soldiers of the Westerlands entered. Meanwhile, Sir Gregor Clegane and Sir Armory Lorch had entered Maegor's holdfast to deal with the rest of the royal family, to secure the throne for Robert and to prove that House Lannister had forsaken the Targaryens forever. When Eddard Stark arrived in the city, he found Jaime seated on the Iron Throne and Aerys' corpse slumped below. Robert Baratheon arrived in the city at a later point, upon which he was presented with the bodies of Elia, Rhaenys, and Aegon by Lord Tywin. Robert was pleased by these deaths, but Eddard called it murder of children. This resulted in an argument between Eddard and Robert, and Eddard rode out alone in anger to fight the final battles of the war in the south. As a side note, this then would end his duties sworn to support Robert I Baratheon, so he could retire back to Winterfell, and much disgust of what he had seen, because Ed Stark was not one to support the murder of women and children. In the days that followed the sack of King's Landing, Jaime Lannister sought out and killed Garrigus and Bellis, the remaining two pyromancers, aware of the wildfire plot. Okay, so now it comes to a more better understanding as to how King's Landing was sacked. Since we had pretty much covered the prelude, which involved at the time the Battle of the Trident, and as much as a distraction with House Greyjoy trying to make a name for themselves, which they did with one victory, but it was minimal at best, and thus distracting the main mission. It now comes down to the sack. Tywin's betrayal. Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock, had remained neutral throughout the war, ignoring calls to arms by both the Loyalists and the rebels. However, about a fortnight after the Battle of the Trident, he appeared at the gates of King's Landing with a force of 12,000 men from the Westerlands. He claimed his loyalty was with Aerys and requested entrance into the city, while Lord Varys, the Master of Whisperers, told the king to keep the gates closed. Grand Maester Pycelle convinced the king to open his gates to Tywin. The Lannister forces began to sack the city, killing people of all ages and raping women. A hand-picked group of men raced to the Red Keep to storm the walls. The Kingslayer. Sir Jaime Lanister of the King's Guard, who was holding the Red Keep, asked permission to make terms when he realized King's Landing would fall. Aerys refused and ordered Jaime to instead kill his father, Lord Tywin. When the Lannister forces sacking the city, Aerys held an audience with his new hand of the king, Lord Rosar. Jaime Jaime's messenger informed him that Rosard had just left from the king. Jaime realized that Aerys meant to burn the entire city with wildfire. Jaime found Rosard before the latter could leave the Red Keep, however, and killed him. While Rosard fought back, he was no match for Jaime. With Rosard's death, the execution of the wildfire plot had temporarily been halted. Jaime next went to the throne room of the Red Keep. Aerys was waiting and informed him of killing Rosard. In shock, Aerys attempted to flee onto his throne. Jaime hauled Aerys off the steps and slashed his throat. And, as a side note, stabbing him through the back, killing the king before he could find another to send message to the pyromancers. Just in time to witness Aerys' death, several knights from the Westerlands, including Sir Ellis Westerling and Lord Roland Craighall, burst into the hall, unable to deny having killed Aerys. Jaime's act earned him the nickname Kingslayer. Jaime ordered his father's men to spread the news that Aerys was dead. Lord Craighall asked Jaime if they should proclaim a new king, and for a moment, Jaime considered Prince Viserys Targaryen. After all, he is about, maybe 10 years old. However, anyone who had become Aerys' new heir after Rhaegar's death, and Prince Aegon Targaryen, Rhaegar's young son, could also be mad. Realizing both descendants from Aerys, he told Roland to proclaim whomever he liked, climbing the steps of the Iron Throne. Jaime sat down with his sword across his knees to await who would come and claim the throne. Meanwhile, Lannister soldiers were fighting the remaining loyalists on the steps and in the armory of the Red Keep. Lord Eddard Stark arrived at King's Landing from the Trident and led his army through the King's Gate. Lord Stark eventually rode into the throne room and, without saying a word, stared at Jaime until the latter got up from the Iron Throne. Rhaegar and Armory. The Lannisters needed a way to prove their loyalty to Robert's cause, and Rhaegar's children had to die to ensure Robert's claim to the throne. So two of Tywin's knights, Rhaegar Clegane and Armory Lorch, scaled the walls of Rhaegar's holdfast. Army dragged Princess Rhaenys Targaryen from under Rhaegar's bed and stabbed her half 100 times, which would also confirm the contradiction that she was actually stabbed about 50 times. Rhaegar smashed the head of the infant Prince Aegon in front of his mother, Princess Elia Martell, in the nursery in the mountain, then raped and murdered Elia with Aegon's brain still on his hands, shooting sperm all over her breasts, into her mouth, and all over her body in a much defiled way, and then squeezing her head till it popped like a balloon. Such evil, and yet nothing could be done to punish him for this. When Robert Baratheon arrived in King's Landing, Tywin laid the bodies of Elia, Aegon, and Rhaenys beneath the Iron Throne and presented them to Robert as tokens of his wish. Children were wrapped in crimson cloaks to hide the blood. While Rhaenys was recognized, Aegon was a faceless horror of bone and brain and gore. No one looked long at him, believing Tywin at his word when he stated it was Aegon. Although the actions of Rhaegar and Armory have been discussed in rumors and are even considered common knowledge in Castle Rock, the murders of Elia and her children have never been publicly confirmed. Some explanations gathered by Maester Yandel for his work, The World of Ice and Fire, include that the Mad King commanded their deaths after learning of Tywin's betrayal, or that Elia killed her own children to prevent them from falling into rebel hands. Oberyn Martell is convinced Tywin himself ordered the deaths of Elia and her children in revenge for her marriage to Rhaegar Targaryen, to whom Tywin had intended his daughter, Cersei Lannister, to marry. So these are the results of the sack of King's Landing. The combatants for the rebels was House Lannister and the Westerlands. The combatants for the Loyalists was House Targaryen, Red Keep Garrison, City Watch of King's Landing, and Loyalist Crownland houses. The commanders for the rebel was Lord Tywin Lannister, while the commanders for the Loyalists was King Aerys II Targaryen. The strength for the rebels was apparently 12,000, while the strength for the Loyalists was several thousand Loyalists. The casualties for the rebels, unfortunately, is unknown. However, the casualty for the Loyalists was King Aerys II Targaryen, slain, or in this case, murdered by Jaime Lanister, now known as the Kingslayer. Rosard, whose sigil was for those that were into pyromancy. Aaliyah Martell, who is wife and queen to, as well as widow to former Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, who was the rightful heir to the Iron Throne of Swords for the realm of the kingdom, firstborn son to now deceased Aerys II Targaryen king. Rhaenys Targaryen, daughter of Aaliyah Martell, stabbed over 50 times, and Aegon Targaryen, a newborn, who, if he would have lived, would have been known as Aegon VI. Aftermath. Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon argued over the killing of Rhaegar's family. While Eddard believed it to have been unjustified murder, Robert had been satisfied with the deaths of Rhaegar's children, whom he described as dragon spawn. Jon Arryn was not able to calm their anger, and Eddard rode south the next day, where he lifted the siege of Storm's End. Afterwards, he traveled to the Tower of Joy, where he battled the three remaining Kingsguard knights of Aerys II and found his sister Lyanna Stark dying. Only the grief Eddard and Robert shared over the death of Lyanna eventually reconciled them. Tywin Lannister gave royalist survivors of the sack, such as Sir Jeremy Riker and Sir Alliser Thorne, the choice of joining the Night's Watch or being executed. Both knights chose the wall. Robert was crowned before Eddard managed to lift the siege of Storm's End. While Eddard had argued that Jaime Lannister should be stripped of his white clothes and sent to the wall, Robert listened to Jon Arryn's counsel instead. At Robert's coronation, Jaime, Varys, and Pycelle were forgiven for their crimes and taken into Robert's service. During the coronation feast, Robert joked to Jaime about the face that he was being called Kingslayer. days following the sack, Jaime hunted down and killed Bellis and Garrigus, the two other pyromancers who had known about Aerys' wildfire plot. Garrigus wept for mercy, and Bellis attempted to bribe Jaime with gold in exchange for his life. The deaths of Elia and her children infuriated House Martell, while Prince Oberyn Martell's attempts at another rebellion were stopped by Doran Martell, Prince of Dorne, following Jon Arryn's visit to Dorne the year after Robert took the throne. Doran continued to plot a Targaryen restoration in secret, working closely together with his brother Oberyn. Elia Martell. Consequences to Elia's murder was as follows. Although Sir Gregor Clegane's involvement is common knowledge at Casterly Rock, the official history, written by the victors, records that it is not known who murdered Princess Rhaenys in her bed, or who smashed the infant Prince Aegon's head against a wall and killed Elia. Some rumors say King Aerys II had commanded it when he learned that Tywin Lannister had taken up Robert's cause, while others suggest that Elia did it herself for fear of what would happen to her children in the hands of her dead husband's enemies. However, according to Tywin Lannister himself, he thought the deaths of Elia's children had been necessary to prove the loyalty of House Lannister to the rebel cause after his neutrality, so he directly ordered them killed. Tywin claims, however, that he had never ordered the rape, and that Elia, by herself, had been nothing, stating that her death had been unnecessary. He claims that he most likely had neglected to mention her when giving orders to Gregor Clegane, and that Clegane had killed her because he had not explicitly been told by Tywin to spare her. Elia's younger brother, marriage of his son and heir Rhaegar to his daughter, Cersei marrying Elia, whom Tywin had refused for his own heir, to Rhaegar instead. The Martells were enraged by the murder of Elia and her children. Oberyn wanted to continue the war and championed the cause of Prince Viserys Targaryen, the only surviving son of King Aerys II Targaryen. Secret messages were sent, but the new hand of the king, Lord Jon Arryn, traveled to Sunspear, where he returned the body of Prince Lewin Martell and spoke with Prince Doran, ending all talks of war. However, Doran Martell, the Prince of Dorne, claims he has been working on the downfall of Tywin since the day he was told about the fate of Elia and her children. John Connington. After the war, the new king, Robert I, took 9/10 of the Connington's land, distributing them to more fervent supporters. He also took away the lordship from House Connington, making them a house of landed knights. Once on the Iron Throne, Robert was not willing to recall Jon from exile, as he had been among Rhaegar's closest friends. The exiled Jon joined the Golden Company and served with them for 5 years, rising quickly in the ranks to a place of honor at the right hand of Sir Miles Toyne, the company's captain general. Jon believes that had his exile gone otherwise, he might have been the successor to his friend Miles instead of Harry Strickland. When he reflected on the Battle of the Bells in his first year of exile, the proud Jon defended his actions. Miles argued that Lord Tywin Lannister would have burned down Stony Sept to kill Robert, despite the civilian casualties. After a few short years in the company, Jon and Miles were approached by Illyrio Mopatis and Lord Varys, who informed them that Prince Rhaegar Targaryen's infant son, Aegon, had survived the sack of King's Landing during Robert's rebellion. In order to remove Jon from the Golden Company, they concocted a plan of which the remainder of the Golden Company was left unaware, so they would not be able to let anything slip. Jon was driven from the company after being caught stealing from the company's war chest. Afterwards, news was spread that Jon drank himself to death in a lift. While Jon went along with Varys' scheme for Prince Aegon's sake, he believed it a dishonorable slight and resented the shameful lie of his death. Varys, however, was adamant about the need for secrecy. The rumors of Jon's disgrace and death eventually reached Westeros and convinced everyone that he was dead, enabling him to focus on raising and protecting young Griff in the guise of his father, Griff, during the past 12 years. Jorah Mormont. Not a whole lot is said about this, as it was only documented about his first wife. But before he was forced to joining the Night's Watch, he did marry a second time. Not a whole lot is mentioned of his second wife, and so a lot of this part of the history has been left undocumented. Lewin Martell. Prince Lewin was the younger brother of the former ruling princess of Dorne. He was appointed a member of the King's Guard in service of King Aerys II Targaryen. Dorne was incensed by the deaths of Lewin and Elia during the war, and Prince Oberyn Martell tried to raise the kingdom to support Viserys Targaryen, the surviving son of the late Aerys. In response, Lord John Arryn traveled to Sunspear the year after Robert took the throne in 284 AC to return the bones of Lewin, and was able to broker a peace with Doran Martell, the ruling prince of Dorne. Arianne Martell recalls her great-uncle fondly, remembering when she was a little girl how her great-uncle Lewin would tower over her and tickle her till she could barely breathe from laughter. It was a closely held secret that Prince Lewin kept a paramour, despite the King's Guard's oaths of chastity. Sir Barristan Selmy and his other sworn brothers were aware of this, but kept their sworn brothers secret. Quotes. I learned from the White Pole in Barristan the Bold. I learned from Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, who could have slain all 5 of you with his left hand while he was taking a piss with the right. I learned from Prince Lewin, Adorn, and Sir Oslo Went, and Sir Jonathan Derry, good men every one. By Jaime Lanister to Loras Tyrell, Osmond Kettleblack, Balon Swan, Meryn Tramp, and Boris Blunt. I never had the honor to know Prince Lewin, but all agree that he was a great knight. By Aerys Oakhart to Arianne Martell. My uncle always said that it was the sword in a man's hand that determined his worth, not the one between his legs. By Arianne Martell to Aerys Oakhart. Littlefinger, who had been at the time appointed to the small council, saw new opportunities. At this time, though it was not quite revealing yet to the Faithful of the Seven, decided to buy a fairly decent part of the building within King's Landing and make himself a brothel, which would turn quite a few gold coins. He would be the one overseeing the management of the brothel and appointed one who was to be the immediate supervisor or manager of the brothel. He was also big. Ned Stark. When Eddard arrived at the capital, Lord Tywin Lannister's force had already sacked the city. Eddard had developed contempt for House Lannister during the rebellion, as Tywin had remained neutral in an apparent attempt to join the winning side in the end. Eddard's contempt increased when he learned that Tywin had conquered the city by treachery, and that his men had brutally killed Rhaegar's wife, Elia Martell, and children, Rhaenys and Aegon. In addition, Lannister flags were flying over the Red Keep when Eddard arrived, and as he rode into the throne room to claim the crown for Robert, he found King Aerys' body at the steps leading to the Iron Throne, on which the king's killer, Sir Jaime Lanister, was sitting. Eddard felt the sack of King's Landing dishonored Robert's cause. He was disappointed that Robert, upon arriving in the city, did not share his moral outrage and, in particular, defended the murder of Rhaegar's children. He also ignored Eddard's counsel that Jaime should be made to join the Night's Watch for breaking his oath as a Knight of the King's Guard and not protecting the king. Their disagreements created a rift between Eddard and Robert that not even Jon Arryn was able to breach. Eddard left Robert in King's Landing and went to Storm's End, where he lifted the siege of the castle. Lord Mace Tyrell and his armies yielded to Eddard without a fight. Afterwards, Eddard traveled to the Red Mountains of Dorne to liberate his sister Lyanna, who apparently was held at the Tower of Joy. When Eddard arrived along with 6 companions, he found the tower guarded by 3 members of the King's Guard, Arthur Dayne, Oslo Went, and Lord Commander Gerald Hightower. The resulting skirmish saw the deaths of all but Eddard and 1 companion, Howland Reed. Eddard is said to have killed Arthur, the Sword of the Morning, in single combat. Unfortunately, when Eddard found Lyanna, she was already dying. Before her death, she made Eddard promise her something. What he promised her has not yet been revealed. The experience haunts Eddard, and he recalls her "promise me," quote unquote, on multiple occasions. However, the shared grief over Lyanna led to his reconciliation with his friend, now King Robert I. As a side note, it can only be in theory and conjecture, though not proven, that Lyanna had asked Ned Stark, her brother, to keep the identity of the one that she gave birth to, who would be known as Jon Rhaegar, to be concealed for his own safety. After that, when she had died, Ned Stark would have had the assigned wet nurse take charge of him and decided to give him the name Jon Snow. In that world, Snow would mean bastard. In which case then, he would have hitched his horse to a wagon so he could properly take his sister's body from the Tower of Joy so she could have a proper ceremony and burial in the crypts at Winterfell. Once having hooked up to the wagon and the body loaded and properly covered decently, he and the wet nurse holding Jon Snow would have went off to Winterfell, and his duties to Robert I Baratheon is now finished because Robert I Baratheon did not do what was appropriate in disciplining those who would kill women and children like cowards. When Eddard returned home to Winterfell, he brought with him his bastard son, Jon Snow. This strained the relationship with his wife, Catelyn, who had given birth to their son Robb at Riverrun during the war. Eddard refused to speak to her about Jon's mother. However, stones concerning her identity circulated nonetheless. When Catelyn heard rumors that the boy's mother was the Dornish noblewoman, Asha Dane, she confronted Eddard about it, but he told her in a brusque manner that the child was his blood, and that was all she needed to know. He subsequently silenced the rumors about Ashara. Sansa Stark recalls later on, after her birth and having grown up, hearing whispers about Jon's mother was common-born. Lord Edric Dane believes that rather than his aunt Ashara, Jon Snow's mother was a woman called Wylla, who worked for House Dane. And at one point, served as Edric's wet nurse. When asked about the mother of his bastard son by King Robert I Baratheon, Eddard also mentions the name Twyla. However, Lord Godric Borrell claims that the daughter of the fisherman who sneaked Eddard away from the Fingers gave birth to Jon Snow. Eddard buried the bones of his deceased kin in the crypt of Winterfell, breaking the tradition of only Stark kings and lords having statues. Ned had them carved for Brandon and Lyanna next to that of Lord Rickard. Barbara Dustin, now Lady of Barrowton, represented resented that Eddard returned the horse, but not the bones of her husband, Lord William, who had died fighting alongside Ned in Dorne. Ned's younger brother, Benjen, joined the Night's Watch. So this ends the House Targaryen dynasty. But that's not the end of the story, by no means. The Targaryen genealogy continues for the realm of the kingdoms, because as long as two dragons live, there is more to tell. But that is a tale for another time. As William finished, he noticed it kind of got late. Wow. As he stands up, she kind of looks over at him. I think we missed lunch. She kind of looks down. Well, I'm sorry, though I know I'm late because I'm from another world, Daenerys. I am sorry for your loss. But as I said before, I'm sure he would have been a great man to meet. So then she looks over at the other side as William's walking around. And then William continues, you know, if you don't feel we should continue, we can always quit. Kind of looking at him, kind of curious. Quit, you mean you do not wish to continue to these lessons? Well, no, it's just that if it's going to affect you in some way to where it upsets you, I wouldn't want you to feel as if my learning is going to also be disturbing to you in some way because of what happened to your father. She kind of looks at him in a nice way. I appreciate, William, the fact that you have many sympathies and concerns for my feelings. I do appreciate this. And, you're right. We did miss lunch. It is getting very late. I think we should call it a day. And after we have dinner, call it an evening. Very well then. You're sure you're going to be okay? Yes, ma'am. Thank you for asking. I will be fine. And so they leave the Hall of Genealogical Records past the other staircase to the library and into the dining hall. So Tyrion, seeing William coming in, so you learning much? Yes, actually, I am, Tyrion. I'm learning about, well, I just learned about what happened to King Aerys II Targaryen and the end of the Targaryen dynasty for that time period. Daenerys doesn't seem to say anything and then continues to eat her dinner. I see this also as not exactly a topic that's easy for Daenerys to go through. I guess not. Well, you should know, William, that this has always been a sensitive subject of hers. I will leave you to ponder on what you have learned. Well, thank you, Tyrion. And so he goes off to join his wife at another table. As they continue eating, William almost hesitant because he's not sure the reaction he'll get, but then gently lays his hand on Daenerys' hand. She kind of looks at him, still somewhat serious, but knows that he's trying to comfort her, and she does make an issue of it. When dinner's over, they go in to retire the chambers, and then William tells her, you know, I'm always going to be here for you. I do thank you when you found me on the beach. You could have left me to whatever my demise would have been, either fish food or dragon food. She kind of finds that somewhat funny and looks at William, gives him a big hug. I don't think I would have liked that. We will finish the lessons tomorrow, William, because now I'll be with my uncle, and he'll teach me many things before, in secret, I go to another location with Viserys. And that's where the period for the Game of Thrones began. This is the part that was missing. All right, well, I look forward to these lessons. So they kiss for the longest time, and because she enjoys the warmth of his body heat, being a human from another world, she goes to sleep in his arms, and thus ends the day for the final lessons of the Targaryen genealogical records and the Targaryen dynasty.